A year ago, I revealed my jack-o'-lantern conversion for the Great Unclean one. I mentioned the painting process could be a whole video on its own, so here it is. This is how I painted the Great Pumpkin. Now, I didn't perfectly film my entire painting process, so I'm just going to give a general description. To start, I went with a zenithal prime, meaning pure black at first, then spraying white primer down from above and the sides. This doesn't need to be white primer, you could also use white ink or just white paint. On the inside of the model, I'm putting a candle light. So to help the light appear brighter later, I'm painting the inside of the model white. Now you might be wondering, how does a white surface make a light appear brighter? Quick light theory. In photography, a white surface like this might be used as a bounce board, the function of which is in the name. Since white is the brightest color, it bounces light very well. This is also why miniature painters, graffiti artists, or illustrators prime something in white, or might paint white first and then put a color on top of it. This way, the color they paint on top will appear to be brighter. So, using our knowledge of light on the inside of our pumpkin here, the candle light appears brighter from the inside, because the pure white is letting the light bounce all over. Back to the outside, I went for a dark orange all over the model, using GW's contrast orange. At first I liked it, but the more I looked at it, the more of an eyesore it felt to me. I tried to convince myself it worked and kept going with some dry brushing, increasing in brightness with the orange colors I used. But I couldn't deny it any longer. I didn't like it anymore. It was too dark and I wasn't happy with the dry brushing result. I don't think I was doing it right. Stripping the paint off this thing was out of the question. I did not have time for that. Since the airbrush layers are so thin, I opted to just airbrush black all over and redid my zenithal prime with white paint. No need to use actual primer because it's not bare plastic anymore. Thankfully, there wasn't any super noticeable obscuring of detail. Now one more time, I redid the first layer of dark orange, this time from the Too Thin Coats range. I then went for an orange wash. This I thought looked fine, but I still felt like I could make the shadows darker. I kept going with brighter oranges. Maybe these would help the shadows appear darker. With the same method as zenithal priming, I airbrushed brighter orange colors from the top of the model and the sides. It did something, but it didn't solve my issue with the shadows. If anything, it got rid of a lot of shadows. I airbrushed on more orange shade, then went in again with brighter oranges, specifically aiming for raised areas. It's kind of getting there. I realized I want to make the shadows darker without darkening the top layers. To me, that meant oil paints, or AK's enamels. I tried orange and red, but neither were dark enough for what I wanted. This whole time, I was second guessing using brown as a shade color. I was afraid it would look too different. However, brown and orange are next to each other on the color wheel, so in theory, they should look fine next to each other. I mean, a pumpkin's natural colors are orange and brown. So I broke out Streaking Grime from AK Interactive, which is brown, and slapped that all over the model. I let that dry overnight, then dug into it to wipe off as much of it away as I could with foam swabs and mineral spirits. So here's the moment of truth, and hell yes, this looks awesome. I felt a new energy with this result. I'm so glad I did this. Now let's keep going. For the gashes in the flesh, I decided to go with a glowing purple. Since purple is a cross from orange on the color wheel, I knew this would work as well. Also, purple and orange are classic Halloween colors. I painted the insides of the wounds with pure whites, then slapped on purple contrast from GW. I really loved it, but I second guessed myself again. I thought, what about yellow? But I stuck with purple. I felt like yellow was too obvious a choice, not sure why. I also went for this purple glow on the sword and the eyes. I then base coated the metallics, the antlers, and the nails. For the metallics, I stuck with bronze, and the antlers and nails would both be brown. For the teeth and the candle on this one pumpkin, I painted them a pastel yellow, washed them with a yellow wash, and then went over them again with the same pastel yellow, staying away from any recesses so the darkness of the wash could still show. I went over the metallics with a Nuln Oil wash. For all of the glowing purple areas, I went with a bright purple to highlight them, catching only the raised edges. For the eyes, I kept the bright purple only in the middle. For all the zits, boils, and other body bumps, I went over all of them with the brightest orange. For the skulls, I decided to go with a gray, as if they're carved out of stone. I also put on some of the purple glow on the forehead dots. And I forgot about the ass cloth on the back. This, I decided to make a sort of skin tone. Perhaps this isn't a fabric, but rather the flayed skin of some massive creature, and I went with streaking grime again on the butt cloth and the chains. For the smoke coming out of the turables, I decided to paint them purple as well. But since I'm interpreting this as a smoke effect and not a light effect, it should look different compared to how I painted the wounds. So I started with a dark purple first, then a middle purple tone, then my brightest highlight would be the brightest purple. Some last touches are throwing on some blood and rust effects on the metal areas and the butt cloth. Now on to the base. To connect the light to the base, I used the command strip. I made sure to cover up the Velcro so I don't gunk it up with paint. I airbrushed different shades of brown, starting with the darkest shade, then worked up to the lightest shade. I didn't bother painting the skulls since they'd be so much brighter than the base and would stick out too much. Besides, these bones have probably been here for a while. They'd be filthy as hell. I gave the little pumpkins a very simple paint job. Base coat, shade, highlight, done. With the colors on, I gave it a black base rim, followed by a matte varnish all over the base and the unclean one. After some base decorations, I put the candle in, the unclean one on top, and our boy, it was finally complete. This is absolutely my best painted model yet. However, I do see areas where I could have done better. That's okay though, it doesn't detract from how proud I am of the result. For those of you that saw my original conversion video last year, thanks so much for giving our big man some love. Since then, that video has been my best performing hobby video, and even Midwinter Mini saw it. To those of you just arriving, welcome. I hope all of you stick around for the Halloween festivities and beyond. Thanks again, and stay spooky. Happy Halloween.